Okay. Hi.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me okay now?
Yep.
All right, great. Hey, thank you a lot for doing this. This means a lot.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so I met your dad at work. He seems pretty knowledgeable about a lot of important social issues. He told me all about you, so I looked you up on YouTube.
Mm.
Um, you didn't ask a lot of the questions I want to know. Um, a lot of what I wanted to know about was like why people get into why people become homeless and how they get out and what are the effective programs for that. And how many of these people are homeless like by choice or by uh here, let me close the door real quick. My son's playing his games. Yeah.
Well, I would say that to answer your question, that almost none are homeless by choice, and the
All right.
reasons for the homelessness are very diverse. So part of the problem, everyone has their own story and their own circumstances that led to them becoming homeless. And so sometimes it's income, sometimes it's escaping domestic violence, sometimes it's an eviction, sometimes it's that they work but it doesn't pay enough for a one bedroom apartment. I would say that the majority of what I see is income related. The rent's too high, the pay or the benefits is too low. They're waiting around on a housing list. They don't know how long it's going to take, and in the meantime, you're homeless, right?
Well, okay, so how many of these people are have jobs and are homeless?
At Unity Village, which is our village of
Yeah.
18 people live there, and it's tiny homes and everything. And out of the 18, we have, I think, two, three, four, five, six. We have about six residents that have jobs.
Okay.
And so and then most of the other residents are on disability, and so the yeah, they're you. I mean, you do the math. Like, how much is minimum wage? Like, I forget. Is it 12 an hour or something? Um, Times that by 40 hours a week. That then add up how much bills and apartment cost, and it seems pretty obvious why you can work and still become homeless.
Oh yeah, yeah. Right now, as I understand it, there is no place in America where a person can have minimum wage and have a one-bedroom apartment.
Right.
You have to have a roommate of some kind.
Right. And some people
Yeah.
can't find that, or their history is such that they won't get approved for getting into a place, like if they've been evicted before or something like that. And so it just ends up being like a downward spiral, so to speak.
So,
Um,
like criminal records, does that play a big part? You think?
yeah, I think that it plays some part, but I don't think it plays the biggest part. I think that the fact that you have to put down on a form if you're applying for a job or you're applying for other stuff, have you have you committed a crime or have you been convicted of a felony or something like that? It actually does prevent a lot from that person kind of getting back on their feet. A lot, it makes it a lot harder. But again, most of the people that we encounter don't have any criminal records, so it's usually income related, like more than anything. Like, hey, I just can't afford it. I'm low income. I'm on the list. I haven't been helped yet, and I'm just in limbo until they approve. And so that's basically what the position most people are in. But that's the thing that sucks is with homelessness, it's treated like a criminal activity. So, and I would just call it like excuses. Like, so we have this problem in our society. It's not good that more people are becoming homeless, and what we initially jump to do is to blame the individual for their situation. Hey, like, you just fucked up, so that's why you're homeless. Or, oh, you did some drugs, that's why you're homeless. Oh, you have a one thing on your criminal record, that's why you're homeless.
Hmm.
And in reality, it is that the system is wrong or is failing, not the people. Okay, and so obviously sometimes the stereotype is true, but I would say like 10% of the time it's not common. And so we found that at Unity Village that it can mostly manage itself. Somebody doesn't it's not just a free for all though. If somebody wants to live there, they have to go through an interview process. They have to go through a meet and greet with the other residents to make sure that they would be a good fit. And it's people that would do well in a community living setting, because some people don't do well in a community living setting. They're more like loner, right? But in this situation, when you have a shared kitchen and everybody has their own tiny home, but you share certain resources together, and so that requires a little bit of community living aspect, like taking care of the garbage, taking care of the water, cleaning, stuff like that. And we've been pretty happy with the results. We basically have about a 30% rehousing rate. It's actually higher than that now, but we've only had like 3 residents leave or find housing since. So it's like 3, like since October, right? So 3 people. What the statistics will get vastly skewed, but before October altogether, we've served about 60 people. And we got about 30% of them into permanent housing, or helped 30% find permanent housing. And
You covered a lot of things right there, and I wanted to follow up on a bunch of them.
Okay.
So you were talking about the illegality of vagrancy, of homelessness, and that's one I've really got a lot of mixed feelings about, because I know I don't want people to like flood the sidewalks with tents or to poop on the sidewalk.
No.
But at the same time, we have to have alternatives for places for them to go.
Right. And I agree with that. And so that's what's going on with the criminalization of homelessness. They say you gotta go. Well, where can we go? There's nowhere for you to go. Just somewhere else, right? And so it never gets resolved. They just have to go somewhere else. All their shit gets thrown away, stuff like that. Now, what I have noticed is that land is incredibly expensive. But let's say that you get rid of that problem and you find a spot. Well, each of these tiny homes costs $4,000 to build with volunteer labor. But we have plenty of volunteers that want to build. People volunteering to build tiny homes is like a lot of people want to do that. And what I'm saying is that each tiny home is $4,000. They come with full electrical, full insulation, just like the inside of a small bedroom. And we have no paid staff at HomesNOW at all. So the whole cost to operate the entire site with all utilities and everything for 18 people is around $1,500 a month. Yeah. And that goes just straight to utilities and any supplies that the village needs, and the standards are such that it's like being in a normal bedroom. And the only issue is that we don't have sewer, so we have porta potties, and we have pumps to pump gray water into our gray water container, which I empty about twice a week, and it's a 300-gallon container, and so we try to make it as high standards as we can, given the fact we have no sewer. We would really like to have sewer, so we had full toilets. But what I'm saying is, other than that, it's pretty nice, especially if it's a stable spot. It keeps you in a stable spot while you get your life back together. And we don't have any hard time limits. I like to define it as emergency housing rather than transitional housing, because even though it is transitional, with the two terms kind of hit me different. If I hear the term emergency housing, to me it means there is a housing shortage and we're providing some very quick housing that's decent while we wait for those real units to come online, which never seems to happen. But whereas if you say transitional, it almost sounds to me like you're taking somebody that's not fit for housing and transitioning them from fucking up to being able to be in that housing. And I disagree with that notion. I think that all of the people that live at Unity Village and most of the people that we've served through other means, I'll tell you a little bit about that later, but are perfectly fit for the same housing that you or I enjoy, and there's just not enough, or their pay is too low in order to pay for it, and so
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of what you're saying seems to be based on your sample, the people that you've accepted into your program.
But
so are they a good representation of the homeless population as a whole? Do you think?
I think so. I think
Okay.
I think that you do have some trouble cases, not in our village, but like with the homeless population. But I would say it's like 10 to 15%, and the rest are people that are just hit hard times. They got into the pit and they can't get out, and it's usually just income related or medical condition related or escaping domestic violence. Like you hear everyone's story and you're like, I could see how that could happen to me if things were just a little different, you know. Like for example, you know, like I've had to be bailed out by my parents like twice in 10 years where I couldn't pay the rent like 1 month here and there. Mm-hmm. Now, if I was in an apartment complex, I would have been treated completely different instead of my parents being like, "Oh yeah, don't worry about this month." And I'm like, "Okay, cool, I'm fine next month." No apartment manager is ever going to do that. Especially if it's a larger company, they're never going to do that. And in fact, I'd be in danger of getting kicked out if like I missed even one, and then I'd be behind and wouldn't be taking in any more money, and then would miss two, and then you get to the point where you get kicked out, and that's happened to a lot of people. And it's just that, and I don't necessarily. When we talk about housing as a human right, I do think that we should provide housing or a zero rent or low rent option for anyone. And this isn't just about homelessness. There should be an option of housing for everyone that's basic. You have to follow rule. And by the way, residents have to follow rules. So they help to form these rules. So it wasn't just us imposing all these rules on them. We have rules we have to follow because of the city of Bellingham requires us to do certain things. But then after that, outside of that, we form our own rules, and the residents formed those rules. And so, and it was basically a democratic / self-governing process to come up with those rules that they could agree with. Now, some people have had to leave because they couldn't follow the rules. And I'm not saying the majority, I'm saying a small percentage, like right. 5% had to go, but like most of the time it's fine. And again, part of the reason why is because they formed those rules and they agreed together on those rules instead of us as the organization going, yeah, we have all these rules you have to follow. And it makes a big difference. People step up, it makes my job easier. But I would say that the vast majority of people that are homeless are just like you or me, and it could happen to us. And in fact, when you're talking about the traditional, what's up?
I'm signing to my son. He's
okay.
Responding to sign language, but I'm just trying to get him to take his game back into his room for what's left. You know. All right, I'm back. I heard everything you said. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. So what I would say though is, let me think of what I had a good point that I was about to say. So, yeah, a lot of the issues related to homelessness that are the stereotypes, like drug addiction and mental health. Often you'll find that people become addicted once they're on the street, like they weren't before. And then in order to numb their situation they will turn to drugs or alcohol more so or more likely.
That was the thing I was going to ask you about. Yeah, because it seems to me like that would be more of a cause than the situation would cause the addictions.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I know I'd be doing more drugs and alcohol if I was homeless for sure. Like you're trying to pass the time, you're in a really bad environment most of the time. You just want to like numb it out.
Well, yeah, you have no options for entertainment. You have no options to make a time pass.
Right.
You've got $20 for all of your entertainment for the week.
Right.
So in that way, drugs are probably a good investment.
Yeah. Right. And so what I'm saying is, if you have a stable environment, people can get their shit together a lot easier. And if you're at a homeless shelter, that's not stable enough. You don't have your own spot. You don't have your own room, right? And so it's not as stable of a situation, and it will keep people kind of trapped there and not able to move forward because they aren't stable enough. And to be stable enough, you need your own place, and you need to be able to contribute in some way, and to realize you can make a difference. And so that's why our main slogan is ending homelessness one person at a time, because each person has their own set of circumstances that are different, and treating them on that individualized basis of their issues and what will help them solve their issues is a much better approach than to try to say that they're all the same or treat them all the same with the same prescription for everybody that ends up being homeless. And I feel like the prescription for homelessness that's put out there is based on the trouble cases and not on the majority of people that are in that position.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to public perception, particularly like the Utah model. I think they were the first ones to start the tiny house program.
Yeah, Salt Lake City, Utah. They and got their homeless rate down by like 90% in a short period of time by just building the housing and letting people live there.
Yeah, and I followed up on that a bit, and it's actually very unpopular, even though it's cost effective and effective. By every metric, it's the best method. But the people don't like it. And a lot of that has to do with the people who become homeless, not just because they do turn to drugs or alcohol to cope, but because a lot of the people in Utah become homeless because they're atheist or because they come out as gay.
Yeah.
And because of the prejudices that are there. They don't want a bunch of apostates and faggots or whatever, and they see them as just the worst people. And then, they're helping.
Yeah, I could see that. But also at the same time, I could see the other argument too, which would apply to other states and other cities, because you do get pushback. You do get where people think it's bad because there's this perception that if you're homeless, you're just looking for a handout and free stuff. And again, I don't have a problem with free stuff, honestly. Like, I like free stuff. You go and there's free coffee somewhere. Oh wow, that's nice. But what I'm saying is like some people that work or they're busy or whatever, they think that they earned it and that somebody else should work just as hard as they did in order to have like a basic dwelling. And I don't necessarily agree with that point of view, but so someone is saying I had to work my ass off to get my house. So unless you want to work your ass off, you deserve everything that happens to you and being on the street. And it's like there's no reason why we should have to bust ass 50 hours a week to have like a room to stay in. And so, that's basically what I'm saying is that I think it's economic. I think there's an American cultural view about the rugged individualism. Like, you're supposed to just do it all on your own and not have any help from people. And if you can't, then you just made bad decisions or you just fucked up. And every time that someone ends up in a bad position, if you believe in that ideology, then you will come up with excuses for why someone else deserves being on the street, rather than the technical solution, which, by the way, building houses and saying, here you go, that's a technical solution to the problem. And what's not coming into that argument at all is like the morality or the character of whoever needs housing. It's just, hey, there's a lack of housing, we built it, here you go. And people can judge that all they want. They can say some people don't deserve it and some people do. I just think that shelter is right up there with food and water and electricity, and that should be like the bare minimum standard, that you don't let anybody fall below that standard. And that's my view on it. I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong about that. And so, yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Okay. My understanding is that the men outnumber women by a tremendous amount in homelessness. I forget the numbers. They're probably kind of liquid. I think that one major reason is because women are able to kind of use their sexuality to get into a place, and I'm not even referring to like prostitution,
No,
but
yeah, like they get into a relationship and the
no,
boyfriend has they don't really like their boyfriend, but their boyfriend can support them and
yeah, he's got a house,
yeah, right,
but
exactly. And I do think that that's true. I think that another reason though is that there's a lot more programs that exist for women with families, and not very many programs for single men, right? And so I think that they just kind of fall through the cracks, the single men. I do think you're right about your point, though, and that would be a secondary factor. But I think that I actually do think that the problem with the social service system that we have is that it segregates a lot. So you only qualify if you meet these 12 conditions, whereas we're a little bit more open. Our model is a little bit more like, hey, it depends on the person, and if you think you'd like to live here, then great. Now, we don't allow children and stuff. That is also a city rule, and I don't think that it would be best for that village, but adults living there and everything, it doesn't matter whether you're woman or man or whatever. We try to actually make sure that the village kind of represents who you'd see in the overall community, like a diverse group, because, I actually think it's kind of weird, like, if you set up a homeless program for, like, let's say you set up a homeless program for, like, vets, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, do you want all these vets with their PTSD at the same time living together? I don't know. I don't know if that's the best way to go. But I think that if you have, a vet in a community of other people who aren't vets, you're actually going to get a much more varied experience where that vet can kind of reintegrate into, like, normal society, and a regular society can kind of understand what that vet went through, rather than like a whole village of the same type of person, right? And so that's our view on it. But again, there's many programs out there, and we're just trying to fill a niche that I don't feel like has been fulfilled very well, and so we're doing our best. And yeah.
Okay. I had this idea that a lot of these big cities that are really struggling with homelessness, and their solution seems to be to just make it as criminal as possible, trump up charges, put them in jail, and then drop charges and release them someplace, and then they have to go back to the streets again. But what if we just started opening up little cities that we kind of develop, and we could have like tiny houses, and we put all of our social programs there, and if we catch you, pitching tents or doing these kinds of problematic homeless behaviors, we take you to the city that has these social services, because we kind of already do that now, where they just drop them off to the cities that have the best social programs, but then we don't fund the social programs, so they're always really struggling.
Right, and I think that what definitely needs to be done is there needs to be some kind of provision or something where land is made available for housing, and you can tell people, hey, you can't put your tent here, but we've got a spot for you to go. In fact, it's better than a tent, but you need to go there because you can't be on the sidewalk with your tent. I'm sorry, but we do have somewhere for you to go. And that would be better. I think that right now they say go to the gospel mission, and then like it's not that great when you go there, and a lot of people can't stand being there, especially having like religion pushed on you and stuff. And so our city does that mostly and says, hey, like just go to the mission, and that's the place you can go. And it's like not necessarily the right place for everyone. And I do think that people are much more stable if they have their own room, they have their own space. And again, $4,000 per unit. You set up the basic village, you let the village run itself basically. Of course, you have to guide it sometimes, but like it runs itself. And you set up a lot of them, and people will be like a neighborhood and a community and try to make their own home better. And if they can't get along with other people, they'll have to go. But I'm saying that doesn't happen for the most part. For the most part, it was better to do it than to not do it. And yes, you'll still have people on the streets like you do now, but you'll get it down to a much lower percentage to where it's like not that many people. And this is a technical problem. It's not we don't have to go into like the character traits of each person. If we have the infrastructure to take care of everyone, then you'll find that all of the problems just get better. Like if people have problems normally, which a lot of people do, a lot of people that are housed have lots of major problems, and that those problems would be a lot worse if they ended up homeless. Just like if you took somebody that was homeless that had a shit ton of problems, and you got them housed, you would find that that they still have those problems, but hey, it's down to like 40% of what it was. Because
absolutely, you can cope better when you got a place.
Yeah, and a stable spot to relax and stuff like that, and entertainment and distractions, and a way to actually like apply for jobs and stuff like that, and like if you have your own computer or something. And
here we don't have a mission. We have the campground, which is protected land that everyone's allowed to use. So they just filled up the forest with all their homeless people. So it's just full of rape and crime and drugs, and everyone's afraid to go into the forest now.
Yeah, and the fact is that there has to be some kind of regulation on it, and I don't mean from the government level. It's that the village itself has to be run, or the tent encampment has to be run. And we started as a tent encampment, by the way, and then we upgraded to all tiny homes, and yeah, the tiny homes are way better. Tents suck in the winter, and what I'm going to say is that if you have some kind of regulated environment, though, you can avoid the drugs and the rape and the crime. The where it ends up being bad is if there's just a free for all and go there and have it be like a totally unregulated thing with no system of accountability or anything like that. That is why that happens, I think, in the forest. If there was a better regulated way of letting people in and making sure you didn't have which, by the way, the vast majority are not. Even the people that are in that forest are not criminals for the most part. Yeah, and but if you have like 5% that are, it's still gonna be in a very unsafe situation because you can't do anything about those 5%, and they cause a lot of ruckus compared to everyone else. And so basically there has to be a way to handle that through some kind of orderly process so that you can avoid that.
I remembered in all your podcasts, you say you don't take money from the state because you're afraid they're going to put in rules that make everything difficult. And I keep wondering, like, what kinds of rules do you think that they're going to implement?
Well, like I define it as strings attached. So, like maybe you get $100,000, but you can only use it for these specific things. So there's other nonprofits in town, the Opportunity Council is another nonprofit. They had a situation recently where they got $100,000 for veterans, but they don't have any veterans to serve. So they have to sit on the $100,000, not spend it at all. And there's people that need housing right now. They just can only spend it on veterans. So they're shit out of luck. Right. And so there's a lot, and then there might be like a grant. You could get a public grant, but hey, this is only for staff. It's not for operations. It's for staff. So
a lot of it comes back to that segregation you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, but segregation and policy. Also, the other reason why we don't is because we're not trying to alienate the other side of, because like I'm more of a progressive. I'm more like center leftish, but I was a Bernie supporter in 2016. Yeah, but I don't try to ignore or forget about people that don't agree with me or are not on my side of the issues. And so part of the thing is that if you have any opposition from the more conservative side or the more that side, they don't have any ammo on us because we can tell them, hey, we've never taken any of your money, and so you can't really like say that our program is taking something from you because it's not. Whereas if you took taxpayer dollars, they would be able to use that argument on you that you took their money and spent it in a way that they wouldn't have approved of. And again, like that's how we've been able to gain a lot of community support. So you'll find that we have a lot of supporters from all sides in a very divisive era, by the way. Everything's really divisive. And we've been able to maintain strong community support from a lot of different groups and that don't agree with each other, right? And so we have to navigate the what's going to get us the most bang for the least buck, and what's not going to piss off a bunch of people either way. And so we've kind of tried to ride that and get to a good policy area where we make everyone where everyone gets 90% of what they want, but not everything they want. And that's kind of how I see it. That I always think of it macro. Like, I'm a macro guy, so I there might be little flare-ups of stuff bad that happens like on a daily or weekly basis randomly. Like, one day it happens, or for a few weeks it sucks, but then it's like, in the long run, will it be okay? And that's all I'm focused on, is long run. Hey, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how do we make it okay? And problems always pop up in the short run, but just keeping an eye on the long-term big picture is important.
Yeah, I hadn't considered a lot of those angles, so that really helps me. You've already answered most of my questions, just with a lot of these long answers, so that kind of saves me. I was wondering if you ever read the book by Adam Shepard, Scratch Beginnings.
I have not.
All right. His whole thing was that he got dropped off at a street corner with like $20, and he tried to live as a homeless person for a few years, and then he slowly got an apartment, then had a bunch of money and some $1,000, and he was just kind of faking being a homeless person he was actually homeless, but I guess he wanted to win the homeless challenge. And his whole thing was that if people are better with their money, that they can move forwards. But he had to admit that he was a young person who was very healthy. He got a job very quickly. He was able to get roommates really fast. He didn't have a lot of the disadvantages, and he quickly admitted that most people would not be able to do what he did for a multitude of reasons. But just the fact that he even attempted it has gotten a lot of people angry and saying that it's wrong to even bring up that some people could find a way out of homelessness through hard work.
Well, I don't think it's wrong to bring up, but I think that it's wrong to assume that the reason why someone's homeless is because they don't work hard enough. A lot of the people I know that are homeless are some of the hardest working people I know. What I see as what needs to happen is there needs to be a provision for if you can't manage your money very well, or there's not enough money, or a no money option, or a UBI, or a universal basic income, or something to that effect, where you've indexed it to inflation. This should be enough to live on, and yes, you need to manage your money, but hey, we set up a system to where even if you can't manage your money very well, you're still going to be okay. You're still going to have electricity. You're still going to have a place to stay. The problem is that everything in the United States is a market. Everything is market, and so you're almost like a piece of trash if you come up with anything that's not market-based as a solution. Even though the actual cost to provide the actual housing itself, the room with the electric lines and everything is so cheap, but because we have a market on housing, it's an impossible option to have a very low rent or no rent situation in a certain percentage of housing. And again, that's a good thing for even people that aren't homeless and aren't low income, because what happens if you provide that option for housing, you're actually going to create a situation where the market will stabilize. Now, that's not good if your housing and your property are like your piggy bank and you're trying to make 100% value on it in 5 years. But if it comes to it, can you buy land affordably? Can you live in a house affordably? That would be a lot easier. That would be a lot better, even for people that aren't taking the low income option, because you're taking people out of the market who would normally be competing with you for the same housing, and so it ends up being where just more people have affordable housing in general. And so there needs to be an option for that, and I think that something like a universal basic income would help, or a type of housing in which, hey, the rent is the cost of maintenance, and anyone can live here. And again, not segregating, just that it's a basic option. It's not going to be a luxurious option. It's a basic option, and it's not going to be trash either. It's just going to be up to modern standards, but only the basics. And if everyone had that option, you would find that it's because that option exists. It's just like public health care versus private. If the public option exists, then the private industry has to compete with that, and so you'll see prices of everything rise more slowly, and that's what I would like to see. I don't, if I own my house, I don't own my house, but if I owned it, I would rather that it was affordable housing for all, and the property value went up slower. But that's me. I know that some people would choose to have 20% more people become homeless if they became 300% richer themselves. I know that exists out there, but I don't agree with that. But
yeah, we're kind of in that situation. We own our home, and the value keeps going up. But we have a huge homeless population up here, and I would much rather they get taken care of, and my house stay the same, because I intend to die here. I don't care what my house is worth.
Same here. The house has doubled in value in like 10 years, and I think that's unreasonable. I actually don't think that that's good. I think that's a bubble, and it sets ourselves up for another crash of some kind. Probably now, maybe later again. And it's about needs versus wants. It's about making money versus providing for people's needs. And so shelter is a need. Whether you're making 200% profit on that shelter or you're making 800% profit on that shelter is a secondary concern to the shelter itself. So that's how I think about it.
All right. Hey, thank you a lot. You gave me a lot to think about. I might email you with more questions some other day. But this was really good. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, anytime at all. Hey, I have a request though. Is it all right if I upload this to our Facebook page and stuff as like an interview?
Oh yeah, sure. If that's helpful for you.
It's always helpful because a lot of times people don't even know what our organization is about. So stuff like this in video form makes it a lot clearer, and we get a lot more support. It doesn't matter who interviews us, or it's just about spreading the word. And so thanks for your time. Thanks for doing the interview. And I was just wondering if we could upload it. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool. Let me just say that I'm going to use this in my group, Critical Conversations in Bremerton, on Meetup.
Please do. Yeah, use it for whatever you want.
All right. Hey, thank you a lot.
Yep.
Let's go.
Take it easy.
All right.